welcome to Daily Fantasy Winners top picks for Week 8. We're doing this pick'em style once again. We have a special guest this week. We're joined by Daniel Steinberg, my twin brother and co-founder of Daily Fantasy Winners. As always, Nick Yuskevich is joining us as well. We are going to go through all the tiers. We're going to skip tiers 3 and 4, save them till the end so we can get the proper quarterback stack. I think that's a good formula for pick'em. So we're just going to start with tier 1. Danny, out of this tier, AJ Green, LaShawn McCoy, and Julio Jones, who's your highest projected player and who do you like the best considering ownerships?
I think for me, LaShawn McCoy, AJ Green, then Julio Jones as far as projection. I think LaShawn McCoy is quite a bit better than those two. I like Julio as far as Atlanta's underperformed this year, and he's obviously a very good receiver. So Julio's low owned in this tier, then I like him.
Nick?
Yeah, I definitely think LaShawn McCoy will be the highest owned. I think that's almost a no-brainer, especially after he finally scored a couple touchdowns last weekend. I really like AJ Green for this tier. The Colts defense is obviously just bad all around, but they are in dead last in yards per pass attempt allowed, and AJ Green arguably should be the highest projected wide receiver this week. Just of all wide receivers, you can debate him and Antonio Brown, that's fine. But in any case, I'll take AJ Green in this pretty much every time, actually.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you guys. I would say in higher stakes games, I might be more willing to take Julio Jones because I think sharper players will see him as the worst out of this tier. But I do like Atlanta's offense. I think Nick showed me the stat at yards per point or yards per drive. Atlanta is very, very high on the season. I think the narrative about their offense being bad is really overblown, so I like him a lot. Tier 2, I'm going to let you, Sked, just start with this. We have Melvin Gordon, Mike Evans, and Mark Ingram. Who do you think is the best projected player? Who do you like the best?
The best projected player as far as, look at this on DraftKings, obviously. I would say Melvin Gordon should have the highest projection, despite the fact that, they're a 7-point dog at New England, just because New England's defense simply just isn't very good right now. We just saw Dante Hightower. He's going to be out for the season now, so he's not coming back, obviously, for this game. So I think for this, I would not play Mark Ingram. Melvin Gordon or Mike Evans are both very good here. Carolina's defense really actually it started out the year okay, but it actually hasn't been very good here over the last a few weeks here and that, and they're a little bit banged up, I believe, as well. And so I would Mike Evans or Melvin Gordon for me here. I think it's kind of a toss-up depending how we look at the rest of the picks here and the rest of the tiers and how it ends up stacking. So,
anything to add, Danny?
Yeah, I think Gordon's clearly the chalk, but he's really interesting because Patriots lost Dante Hightower for the season. He's their best linebacker. Their defense has been really bad. Their run defense probably isn't that good, and their linebackers aren't good, so he could have a pretty good game, even though they're huge underdogs, and that's not normally good for a running back. Mike Evans has had brutal matchups all season, and he was an opportunity monster last year. Ingram, I think maybe he'll get really low ownership because it's like, he's done well recently, so people don't want to use him. I don't know if people
I think it's the opposite. I think he's going to be the highest owned out of this tier.
And the Saints have good run blocking, so I like him. I think Ingram's good. They're all good.
Okay. Yeah, I like Ingram. I think he's actually going to get the highest ownership out of this tier. I wouldn't be surprised because he's just been killing it recently. So I would probably I think Mike Evans or Gordon is just the way to go. If you think that, if you agree with Danny, Ingram is a solid play as well. Tier 5, we're going to skip over tier 3 and 4. I'm just going to lead this one off. We have Gronkowski, Ertz, Freeman, Michael Thomas, Jordan Howard, and Keenan Allen. Out of this group, I think a lot of these guys are close. I would say probably Zach Ertz is the worst out of this group with a tough matchup. San Francisco's been good against tight ends, and a lot of these guys have more upside than him. Jordan Howard's probably second worst. I would say the best is probably between Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, and Devonta Freeman. Gronk's a little below there, and it's possible New England runs the ball more in this game. I'd probably go with Allen. I'm worried about him being high owned, but I think he's the best player in this tier for me. Do you guys have anything to add?
I'll just add really quick here. If you don't end up using Melvin Gordon in the tier number 2, I really like Keenan Allen for this tier. There are enough good players here in this tier. I don't think one player, I just don't think will get like super high ownership, in my opinion at least. And so obviously we just touched on New England's defense. And so it would be Keenan for me. If you do end up using Melvin Gordon in that tier, then I would say Devonta Freeman's my favorite of the others.
I think my main spiel would be Jordan Howard. I don't like him. I think Chicago started running the ball a ton when Mitch Trubisky was played quarterback, but they haven't really had a game where they've fallen behind a lot, and they're projected to fall behind a lot in this game. I think they're going to have to throw it. I think you can't really project Howard that high as the main running back when they're almost 10-point underdogs. He's just not going to get enough volume, I think, even though he's gotten insane volume recently. But I think the volume is surprisingly low in this game.
Okay. I like Sked's call with Devonta Freeman. I'm going to put him in. I think he's been underperforming, but the Jets are not a great run D. He seems like someone who might be under the tier, so I'm going to put him in our lineup. So far, I put A.J. Green, Mike Evans, and Devonta Freeman so far, so we have some stackability with some elite wide receivers. Tier 6, Brandon Cooks, Christian McCaffrey, Chris Hogan, Amari Cooper, Kelvin Benjamin, Alshon Jeffrey. Dan, I'm going to throw this to you because I know you have a particular play you like in this tier.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk about both Cooks and Hogan. So Hogan has done really well early in the year. I think a lot of that has to do with positive injury impact he had. He's never really been that good of a wide receiver, that productive wide receiver till this year. So I'm really fading his production. Cooks, on the other hand, he's a really high average depth of target player. So there's a lot of variance in how many fantasy points he's going to get week to week. That's good because we want variance to win GPPs, so he's a good play. The other thing is, I think it's an argument for him, the reason why he hasn't done as well this year. He's going to be shadowed by Casey Hayward, and Casey Hayward's really shut down people in coverage. Or he's projected to be shadowed by Casey Hayward, but I guess we're not positive that's going to be the case. Anyways, I like Cooks and really don't like Hogan.
Okay.
Nick, anything, Dad?
Yeah, no, I think that's well put there. Certainly, I agree with that point. But I'll just say from my end, I'm looking. I think Carolina Tampa, as long as it's not going to end up being too windy, I do think that's going to be a higher scoring game than the projection says it will be. So I actually like Christian McCaffrey. I know he hasn't had like a huge monster game yet, but right now with Jonathan Stewart banged up right now, and Christian McCaffrey is still a huge home run threat. It just hasn't happened yet. So I like McCaffrey, especially on obviously DraftKings with the PPR value. And then Kelvin Benjamin is obviously pretty good as well. And so I would probably look at those two if you do decide not to go with Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I like Alshon Jeffrey as well. I think McCaffrey is the top play of this bunch. I would actually be worried he probably gets the highest ownership too. So to pivot off of ownership, I'm probably gonna let's put in Benjamin because I see we have Funchess in this next year, and it might be nice to get Funchess and Benjamin in the same year.
I feel like we should do Jeffrey though, because Jeffrey has the lowest fantasy points per game. He's someone I really like. I only commented on the but
right.
His opportunity has been huge this year. San Francisco's given up a ton of fantasy points to outside wide receivers. They're projected to score 30 points. It looks like he's at the lowest fantasy points per game, so maybe he'll be. I like him.
Yeah, but fair point. All right, let's put Jeffrey in.
And also Benjamin, Tampa Bay's given up a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers. I bet you he's overvalued.
I also think Tampa Bay is an unbelievable wide receiver matchup for several reasons. I think I talked about in my last video. Tier 7, Michael Crabtree, Carlos Hyde, Alvin Kamara, Nelson Aguilar, Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, Devin Funchess, and LeGarrette Blount. I will lead the way on this one. This is an interesting tier. We have Hyde, who does not have a good matchup. I wonder if he'd be the highest one on this tier. I know people like Kamara as well. Nelson Aguilar and LeGarrette Blount, I think, are sort of the lower end of this tier. Even though I like Aguilar, but I just don't think he really holds up to these other players. This is an interesting one, and I don't know if there are any ownership things stands out. I don't know if I would assume people probably will use Alvin Kamara out of everyone here. I do like Funchess, though, as a sleeper. I really like Tampa Bay as a wide receiver matchup. I don't think he'll be that highly owned. Also like D-Jax because I think he's a great wide receiver, still has a ton of speed, playing in a better passing offense this year than last year, and might be under-owned as well as a home run threat. So I'd probably choose between one of these guys thinking about ownership. I'm curious what you guys think.
I think the Buffalo is much worse against the pass. They're 18th in yards per pass attempt allowed and 4th against the run. This is a game that Oakland is an underdog in. And last week we saw everybody go crazy when it was the Amari Cooper game, and Michael Crabtree didn't get involved until the very end of the game, really, with that game-winning touchdown. So it's really funny watching different places project Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper this year. And so for me right now, as far as you're just looking at price versus neutral matchup. Carlos Hyde and Michael Crabtree are usually like the most expensive guys here, and I actually think Crabtree will be under-owned. Not a bad matchup for him either against kind of an average to mediocre Buffalo secondary. So I'll take Crabtree here. Actually,
I like that logic a lot. Anything to add, Danny?
I think Aguilar is clearly the worst one, even though he's decent. I mean, he's arguably the third option on that team. I mean, Blount, he's a 13-point favorite, and he's played really well this year. So he could be okay. I mean, it feels like because he's on, the Eagles always like rotated 3 or 4 running backs. He's just not someone that really anyone wants to play. So maybe he's all right. I mean, he certainly has upside. He could get 2 or 3 touchdowns if he gets runs near the goal line. So, I don't know. Blount doesn't seem bad at all.
That's an interesting play as well. I'm gonna
probably go with Crabtree.
Okay, we're going with Crabtree. Tier 8, last tier, before we get to quarterbacks. Doug Martin, Ted Ginn Jr., T.Y. Hilton, Jermaine Kearse, Danny Amendola, who might not play, so he might be a wash there. Mohamed Sanu, Hunter Henry, and Joe Mixon. I really want to leave this off because I have a play I really like here. Joe Mixon, I think, will be the chalk. I think. Maybe you won't, but
which tier round? I'm sorry.
What do you say? Oh, sure. Doug Martin, Ted Ginn, T.Y. Hilton, Jermaine Kearse, Mohamed Sanu, Hunter Henry, Joe Mixon.
Okay, sorry. I didn't see Joe Mixon initially. Okay,
so Joe Mixon, I think, will probably be the chalk with Cincinnati being 10-point favorites. Maybe not. I really love T.Y. Hilton. I think that the line of this game is going to scare people away from Hilton. Not because they're underdogs, because they're huge underdogs and will probably pass quite a bit. But they're only projected to score 16 points. Hilton disappeared last week. However, that was against Jacksonville. We've seen him have huge games. San Francisco, 177 yards, no touchdowns. That's 27 DK points. Cleveland, he had 153 yards for 30 DK points. This guy can have huge games. I think by the numbers that I look at, I don't know the Bengals are that tough of a wide receiver matchup. I really want to put him in there. I'm curious if you guys have any other people who stand out for you.
I think Carolina, is a good run defense. Having said that, Doug Martin plays a lot of snaps and is pretty good. I think he's clearly the highest projected player to me. People may not play him that much because Carolina's run D is good. I mean, they're clearly good, but I don't know. He should be. I see him as the highest projected guy. I love Mohamed Sanu just this year. I think he played really well last year, and he's a pretty talented player. Jets, their slot corner is pretty bad, but he's also concussed, so he may be someone who gets just a super good matchup. So, and then Jets run D is good. So I'm into Sanu.
Yeah, so I do think that, just to touch on Cincy and Indianapolis really quickly, I think this line is a little bit inflated, and mainly because Indianapolis, it's funny, they've only beaten Cleveland and San Francisco barely, so they've beaten 2 of like the worst football teams, or at least the 2 winless teams, but they've been competitive in every other game except for Jacksonville and the Rams, where their offensive line was just absolutely manhandled by 2 very good, defensive lines. And so I think that's playing part of the reason a little bit here into the inflation, and Jacksonville really beats up on bad teams. And so one of the things here I'll say is, so for Max, for you about T.Y. Hilton, I completely agree with what you're saying as far as Hilton goes. The one guy I'll throw in here just because it's one of those things that I don't know if we put any Chargers in the lineup yet, but I actually think Hunter Henry's really good. I don't think a lot of people usually go to tight ends here in a spot like this for, obviously we have a lot of options here. And Hunter Henry is somebody who's been way more involved in the offense now, finally. Somebody certainly could be catching a couple of touchdowns as a huge red zone threat, and it's got actually pretty good upside for tight ends. But I again, like T.Y. Hilton, I don't think he'll be that highly owned, and
I say let's go with T.Y. Hilton. I totally buy Max's logic.
Okay, let's do it. So now tier 3, we're going back to quarterbacks. So Carson Wentz, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Cam Newton, Matt Ryan. I think out of all these guys, the only player we're using is Alshon Jeffrey. I do think that's a nice contrarian stack. So I think we'll use the Wentz-Jeffrey stack. Tier 4.
Can I just comment about tier 3?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think it's good practice to predict what the Patriots are going to do on a week-to-week basis. But having said that, I'm going to try to predict what they're going to do. Last year they had a game against the Broncos, who had a very good pass rush, very good pass defense, really bad run defense. And they ended up running it 39 times and only passing it 32 times. The Patriots, I feel, often adjust their game plan to the team they're facing. Chargers have an extremely bad run defense, and an extremely good pass defense, and an extremely good pass rush. I really don't like Brady this week. I feel like they will run the ball a ton against the Chargers. Having said that, I'm sure I'm wrong, but that's what my gut is telling me.
Nick, anything to add?
I actually do think Danny's logic's good. The Chargers in yards per play defensively, they've been much better against the pass than against the run, so it would logically make sense, especially with the injuries the Patriots have. As far as tier 3 goes, I do think I think Wentz is good to pair him with what we're doing. I'll just say to people, if you do go, you don't even have to. Cam Newton is a dual threat guy, so obviously you don't technically need to pair Cam with anybody, but if you do, obviously Newton I think is a good spot here. But it's Wentz or Newton here for me.
Yeah, also,
I think
Wentz second highest total rushes among QBs this year, so
yes.
Underrated running from that guy.
Yeah. Despite the fact he's a white guy, he actually can run the ball. I will add that if we did choose to go with Cam Newton here, I would just immediately switch this lineup to Benjamin and Funchess and get the nice correlation there. So the quarterbacks you use should really, really be a function of the receivers you're using. Last tier 4, Jameis Winston, Phillip Rivers, Derek Carr, Tyra Taylor, Andy Dalton. We could do Dalton with Green, which makes a lot of sense. We could do Evans with Winston. We could do Crabtree with Carr. We actually have a lot of options here. I would say from a projection standpoint, my guess is Winston is probably my favorite. I'm curious what you guys think.
I honestly, this is flip a 5-sided coin here. I mean, really, this is. I think these are all great options, depending who you obviously are pairing it with. For us, man, I'm going to lean with Winston just because Carolina's pass defense is worse than the rush defense, and because we have Mike Evans in there. I'm going to lean with Winston for what we're doing here. But man, this is a brutal tier to pick. It really is.
Right. I think I have Dalton as my highest projected QB. I'm curious because he has the lowest fantasy points per game. People underrate him, but again, I don't know if he's supposed to do well. I like Tyrod Taylor. The guy has just superb rushing stats and is a really good QB and is at home against a bad defense. I mean, he seems like someone who's not sexy at all, but just gets it done, you know?
I actually disagree with him not being sexy. I think he's actually projected by FantasyLabs to have some of the highest ownership.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I think Oakland, people are really souring on Oakland's D. I'm going to go where we had the most agreement with Winston. And I think we had a little contrarian with Mike Evans there, so I think this is a good stack. So we have our team: AJ Green, Mike Evans, Carson Wentz, Jameis Winston, Devonta Freeman, Alshon Jeffrey, Michael Crabtree, T.Y. Hilton. This is the winning pick-em lineup, guys.
Can I just, in the spirit of DFS, a tinker? What about Derek Carr? He may be the least sexy guy in the tier 4, and we have Crabtree already.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's put Derek Carr in there. I agree with that logic. Last second tinker. This could screw up everything. It's just like normal stuff. All right, well, we've made our lineup. I hope you've learned a bit about our top picks through making this lineup. And thank you, Danny and Nick, for joining us. I'm just going to sign us off. You can, if you have any questions about this video, please tweet at MixJSteinberg. All our Twitter handles are on the video, at Nick Yuskevich, at Daniel Singer S. You can also find us Daily Fantasy Winners Forum. We'll be talking football all week. So again, thank you for joining us, and good luck with your lineups this weekend.